Crank up the volume and get ready for real-world bird hunting by listening to the Wingmen Podcast by Eastman's. Now your host, Todd Helms.
Hey guys, welcome to another episode of the Wingmen Podcast, and I have Jake Latendresse on from Latendresse Media with me today. Jake, it's been a long time. You were one of the guys that was recommended as a guest very early on by Jim Silbier and several other folks. And I'm sorry that it's taken this long to hook up, man, but you're a busy dude. You are all over the map. You were stuck in a hotel last week and in Florida the week before that, it seemed like. And, man, you've been all over the place. So what have you been up to?
Oh, man, it seems like the wheels were just spinning and getting nowhere during the whole COVID era. It seemed like I was busier than I ever had been, just trying to keep up with everything, make some transitions into the more into the digital world. And, we were dealing with cancellations and questions at Prairie Rock Outfitters, and had some, trips canceled with my media company that were supposed to be overseas that obviously never happened. But, we were just catching up on things, and Bassmaster got postponed into late summer and fall last year. So when that picked up, travel started again, and man, I got busy. As I always say, I was busier than a two-headed woodpecker.
I haven't heard that one, but I like it. There's all kinds of those sayings that go around. But you were telling me before we jumped on, you could take a breather or take a break. I wouldn't say a break, but you could catch a breath at the moment, and start doing some editing on a lot of the media that you've got. You had some trips backlogged and things you just couldn't get to. But you were stuck. Last week, you called me and you were like, dude, I can't do this. I'm stuck in a motel. I know there was another podcast. I think it was if I remember right, it was the Retriever Connection podcast that you had to kind of postpone. You couldn't get back for that. What was going on?
Yeah, so I was in Jacksonville, or just south of Jacksonville, in Palatka, Florida, filming the first Bassmaster event for the 2021 season. And the ice storm down south and really all over the country hit. And I was stuck in Jacksonville in the airport for 33 hours outside of my original flight schedule. So I got a hotel at the airport and basically sat there for 2 days waiting for a new flight to come in, because you couldn't get through Atlanta, Dallas, Houston. Even they tried to reroute me through Newark and Philadelphia, and all the backlogged, canceled flights had all the other airports filled up. So it was very difficult to get out of there, but I did catch up on some sleep.
There you go.
And yeah, which was necessary, and finally got home and just got back from the Knoxville, Tennessee River Bassmaster event the day before yesterday. So now I've got about 12 more days until the next Bassmaster event. So I'm going to take that time to hang out with my kids and catch up on some edits, photos and video edits that are backlogged even up to 12 months. So lots to do, but it's kind of a break from travel.
Sure. Yeah. We were the northern and western states were kind of laughing at everybody when that whole thing first started. And then it real quickly, it was like, yeah, we deal with this all the time, but it real quickly became realized that this isn't a laughing matter. These people this is more than just like a storm that blew it. This was a big event that the folks in the South, and especially Texas, Florida,
Ooh.
Man, they don't have the ability to deal with it like we do, where the snow plows come out, the salt goes down, or the dirt goes down on the roads, and people are used to driving in it and being in it, and infrastructure can handle it. And man, it's interesting, because if you threw that kind of heat at anybody from the upper Midwest, the Texas heat and the heat they get in Florida on a regular in the summertime, they'd melt. They wouldn't know how to handle that, or some of the storms that they get and stuff like that. So it's just interesting to see how the different parts of the country, how things get just just crushed. I remember I was a kid, man. It had to have been the late 80s. Late 80s, I think, maybe early 90s. There was some friends went to Florida on spring break. And I mean, I was a kid. I think I was like 3rd grade, 4th grade. And our teacher came back. It was him and his family. They went down there, and Florida had an event similar to what had just happened. And they were talking about all the fish washing up on the beach that weren't dead, but they were like stunned, you know, the cold, they couldn't handle it. And they're like putting them back in the water, you know, trying to help them out. And the turtles, and you were seeing pictures of all that same stuff this time around. And it was like, man, like once every 25 or 30 years, it seems like that happens.
What about the car pileups and the tragedies that occurred on the highways in Dallas and you know other cities around the country? Was just, you know, it's horrendous to watch those accidents. You know, I don't want to get too detailed and gruesome with it, but you know, those semis plowing into piles of cars was just really hard to watch. So, you know, another testament to them not being able to handle a natural disaster, if you want to call it that. You know, particularly down in Texas, I had friends that would text me when they had what little power they did, and they were trying to conserve cell phone energy because they couldn't charge their phones. All their extra you know, mobile battery chargers were out of juice because they had used all the power, and those things, not knowing how long it was going to last. So yeah, that was a catastrophe. And of all the things that we've been through over the past 12 months,
I know
it was just an add-on pressure for a lot of people to have to deal with. And it's like, when are we ever going to get a break?
Yeah, I thought the same things when I was watching, like you said, watching the pileups and things like that. And yeah, I mean, it seems like here, especially in Wyoming, that now, especially down on the I-80 corridor, driving over the Continental Divide, that kind of stuff happens all the time, unfortunately. But man, if you're not prepared for that, if you're not used to it, it's tragic. And the stuff that happens is, and it's like, man, can you catch a break or not? Because you're absolutely right. Absolutely right. But well, at least you were stuck in a hotel room and all that, and not, you know, someplace with no power and having to, man, no fun. Just no fun.
It was like I said, I did have a few days to catch up on some sleep. I had a few beers in my room, caught up on a little. I did have some short edits that I needed to get done, you know, for some branded commercials that I had backlogged. So you know, as busy as you are as well, and all of us that are super busy, multitasking, you take downtime and you try to be productive with it. So, you know, you're either catching up or getting stuff done that you need to get done anyway. So
yeah,
one way or another, you're busy.
Yeah, there's no real downtime. You know, it was like my family, my wife and kids got sick last week, and I got it a little bit. It's kind of a 24-hour bug thing, but it's like the whole house is laid up, you know, and my wife can't do anything. We got a little one. She's laid out. And my other 2 kids aren't going to school because they're sick. And it's like, I guess daddy's staying home. And there's no downtime. You're just adding all that onto working from your laptop at home, you know, doing the rest of the stuff, whether it's editing or whether it's, who knows. It's just crazy. It's crazy. But you're right. So
I've got 3 kids. Oh, go ahead.
No, man, go ahead.
I was just going to say, I have 3 kids. I'm a single co-parent at home, and whoops, the light just went out. Single co-parent at home, and having 3 kids. I have a 9, a 7, and a 3-year-old. And when I come home from a trip, you know, I hit the ground. You think you hit the ground, you can have time to unpack and unwind. Nah, I hit the ground running as soon as I walk in the door, because, you know, my ex-wife drops the kids off. She's had the kids for 5 days. We're very amicable. So I realize she's had the kids for 5 or 6 days. It's my turn. So as soon as I get home, I get the kids, and it's, you know, my analogy is, when you have 1 kid, it's daddy, daddy, daddy. When it's 2 kids, it's daddy, 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 daddy. When it's 3 kids, it's daddy, 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 daddy. And it is a constant. I love being a parent. I love my children, but it is a constant 24/7 job, as you know, especially when they're young.
Oh yeah. Yeah. Mine are 3, 5, and 5 months, 3 years, and 5 years. And so it's, the 5-month-old's pretty easy still at this point, but he's not far off, man. He's already like pulling himself up on the side of the couch, and it's like, oh man.
You're like, in terms of age class, you're 2 years behind me in terms of where my kids are now. So I know right where that is. And we always thought 2 kids seemed busy. 3 kids, you're outnumbered.
Yeah. And I got a couple of the guys from here at work have 4.
Woo!
Well, one has 4, another one has 4th on the way. And there's like, once they get and it's funny because it's like, once you get to 3, you might as well just round it out and have 4, 5, 6. It doesn't matter. It's like, they
have a whole litter. Yeah.
They got you outnumbered by that point, and it doesn't matter. But, well, Jake, we could sit here and talk about kids and stuff all the time, but for the folks that might not know or aren't familiar with your company and what you do, give us a rundown. What is Latendresse Media?
Yeah, so Latendresse Media is essentially a freelance media company. We do multimedia tasks and productions at different levels. We've worked for some really big brands. We work for some really small startup brands. We're non-biased. We try to, pick and choose people that we work with based on chemistry and how well we get along. Because as you know, and everyone else probably knows, you could take a job and get paid as much as you want. And if there's no chemistry, it won't work. Eventually you'll run out of energy and the relationship will dissolve itself. So, we work with some really cool people and some really good brands. I've been around for 22 years now in the outdoor space, in the hunting and fishing industry. Started out in the outdoor adventure ice climbing world.
Okay.
And just sort of transitioned into the hunting space because that's really where my passion and love is from childhood. I do have a few people working for me. One's full-time, and I've got some freelance guys and gals out there that do various tasks for us. But, essentially we build commercials, we do artwork, we do photography, we do live broadcasting for Bassmaster as a freelance guy. And then, we build feature films for people like Ramsey Russell. In the waterfowl space, I've been working for RNT calls since 2002 now. That's how far back my relationship with Jim Ronquest and John Stevens goes. So
Jim was when Jim was on the podcast, you were one of the folks that he said. So I've had 2 people, both Jims, Jim Sobir from Sitka and Jim Ronquest from RNT were like, you got to get Jake on and talk. He'd be great. So,
well, they're both great guys and good friends of mine for sure.
I enjoyed I enjoyed hunting with Jim Sobir and enjoyed talking with Jim Ronquest. It's definitely, I told him, I said, Jim, after season's over and everything kind of calms down, I got to have you back on. We got to talk about, how your season went. Cause it was kind of heading into it. We hadn't gotten crazy. You're in Colorado, right? Mm-hmm. And so, go ahead.
I'm in Fort Collins, or just east of Fort Collins, Colorado, in a little town called Timnath. And then, my outfitting service is up in western Nebraska on the North Platte.
Right. And so, and I'm like almost straight north of you up in northwestern Wyoming. And so, and Jim is kind of on that same latitude as you are, roughly, and so bird wise, the way things work out, those seasons don't get going until, November, December, January. And I don't know, for us this year anyway, we got a big push early in like October, and then they stayed for ducks anyway. And then they pushed out towards the end of the season. We were like, we need weather. And all the geese were up in Jim Sobir's neck of the woods in Montana. And we got too much weather, and I think it shoved most of our birds down to where you guys are at. Because
Thank goodness.
dude, our last week and a half, our last week was a bust. You know, it was 20 below, 30 below. We had guy actually recorded temps at his weather station at his house, that his little weather station does wind chill, factors it in. He had 47 degrees below zero one morning at his house. And
we were in the same boat. We had negative 26 at one time. My business partner has a cattle company too, so he was calving. It triggered the calving season. It went
brutal,
ballistic, dude. It was just was.
Does he have barns, or is he doing it out?
He was trucking him. He had a heated cargo trailer. So as soon as the calf hit the ground, they had like literally, people don't realize this, but they had like a minute to get their calf into the cargo trailer that was heated with hay in it, to get him into a heated barn, just so they wouldn't freeze to death. I mean, they literally, if two hit the ground at the same time, it was chaos.
Well, and I think a lot of ranchers here, they did the best they can, but I think there's a lot of make or break during that whole deal. There was an awful lot of calves and stock in general, you know, a lot of anything that was old, had some age on it, horses, mules, stuff was, I mean, it's unfortunate, but you saw stuff dying like crazy when it was that cold. And for me to be griping that it pushed my birds out, or that the birds flew straight over and didn't stop, you know, until they got down in Nebraska or Eastern Colorado, was big deal, you know, when you look at it like that. But holy smokes.
Yeah, we had deer and elk. We had deer and elk tearing hay bales up, you know, because they didn't have food. I mean, we had 12 inches of snow and negative 26 degree ambient temperatures with negative 40 degree wind chills. And, you know, the deer and elk were busting into all the haystacks because that's really all they had to feed on at that time. So I'm sure we lost some deer. You know, it probably culled out the weak in the herd, which isn't always a bad thing. But you know, I'm anxious to. I'm going to go up and shed hunt here in a few days at Prairie Rock, and I'm going to be surprised if I don't find some dead carcasses in the woods.
Oh yeah. No, it was. I remember 2-3 years ago, we had a big storm like this, and it lasted and kind of had a real rough March and early April too. And when I actually went to film a turkey hunt in the Black Hills of Wyoming that spring, we counted the first day, we counted over 50 winter kill whitetails.
Wow.
I mean, it was just the chunk of ground we were hunting was just littered with dead deer, and it was all fawns. It was all fawns, whether buck fawns or doe fawns. It was all young of the year. We never found a single mature animal. So crazy. But yeah, we transitioned off talking about your media company back to the weather again.
It's all related, right? It's all part of it, because that's what we do. And, you know, we're in the outdoor space, so we're constantly monitoring the weather. We're looking at, you know, natural resource management, conservation, all these things that we're talking about is all part of what we do. And it affects us somewhere down the line. It has some sort of a snowball effect, either positive or negative, one way or another. So it's all relevant.
Yeah. I completely agree. It's, you don't sit down and talk to other hunters or anglers and not the things like the weather and things like that. They just come up, because it affects you 100%. You know, like I said, we literally we lost the last week of goose season because it was just too much weather. So
it's funny that, you know, our season, we struggled when we got the big super moon in December. We started to struggle with nocturnal birds.
Yeah.
And so I started calling, you know, friends of mine and other people, other resources around the country in different parts, even from Ontario to Alberta and Saskatchewan. I talked to you once. Was obviously in touch with Jim Ronquist quite a bit, who talks to Ira McCauley at Habitat Flats. And, you know, we just go around this big circle, exchanging information. And one of the phenomenal things that occurred was how many people were saying the same thing in different parts of North America about nocturnal birds being affected by that supermoon. And it took them a long time to come out of that. I personally think it affected their photo period. I'm not sure if birds have a pineal gland or not, but that's the mechanism that triggers, the rut and the things in mammals, and whatever triggers that in birds. I think it affected them in a way that they flipped their photo period, and it took them a while to come out of that crazy phenomenon that we saw. And again, it was weird because it happened all over the country.
It was literally like a universal theme. Everyone that I talked to or had on the podcast, it was the same thing. They had birds. It wasn't the problem. The migration was pretty good, but they were nocturnal. And if you were trying to kill them on a feed, forget it. Yeah. And it was, for us here, it was, it was warm, so they weren't roosting on the river. They were roosting on water treatment facilities that you can't hunt. And there were 3 different ones that I knew of that each of them probably had 7 to 10 or 12,000 birds on it. And there was a reservoir with a warm water spring that feeds into it. So there was a big chunk of open water on that was, it was quite a ways south of here, but it was doable for a hunt, and I kept my eye on that about once a week going down there. Same thing. You'd go there during the day and it would be covered in birds, and they would not leave that sucker until it got dark. Or right before dark.
We had the same thing.
Yeah,
it would be the early morning shoot for about 30 minutes to an hour was your normal duck. That's what you expect when you duck hunt wherever you are in the country. And then it was dead. And I mean, dead to the point to where you wouldn't even, if you didn't know the birds were in these sloughs on the refuge on our river system, you literally wouldn't even know there was a bird that existed within 100 miles of there. And then right at shooting time, we'd go back in the afternoon to see if we could get an afternoon hunt in, and right at shooting time, these birds would come pouring out of these sloughs off on the refuge.
Yes.
And I mean, by the tens of thousands. And we figured during that time, we probably had about 100 to 130,000 mallards on our property. And again, during the day, you wouldn't even know they were there. But then right at dark, it was like a
sight to behold
movie.
Yeah, it's a sight to behold. And it just absolute vortexes of birds into a feed somewhere. Same exact thing. In fact, the latest video that we put up on YouTube and Facebook was a solo deal. I couldn't get anybody that wanted to go one morning, and so I just grabbed the camera guy. I was like, come on, it might be a bust, but we got to try. And I put together a quick 1-man limit. And if you wouldn't have been filming, we'd have killed 10 birds. If the camera guy wouldn't have been filming and he'd have been shooting, we'd have gotten 10 birds. But that wasn't the storyline. But it was the same thing. That first 30 minutes, man, you had to capitalize on the birds. That it was like, and I kind of ranted that morning a little bit about, you take what you can get, and when it gets tough, everybody wants to shoot these birds that are backpedaling right in your face. And I was like, that bird's cupped up looking at my decoys at 30 yards. I'm shooting.
You better shoot them. You got to scratch the hunt out. Yeah, instead
of
doing it the way you really want to, you had to scratch out the hunts. Particularly, for us, we had paid hunters, and I'm at the lodge going, you guys, we cannot be late tomorrow morning. We were 10 or 15 minutes late yesterday, and you saw what happened. We missed a good proportion of that morning hunt because we were running late. We're fumbling around after shooting time. Ducks are in the decoys, and like you said, when it's lean like that, you have to capitalize on what you have to take what it gives you, right?
Oh man, yeah, that was the case every time. We had one hunt that we'll release later that was end of the season, and it was a little tiny secluded spot, like a back channel off the river. and there were thousands of ducks using that thing. And everybody was like, it's 20 gauge. This is 20 gauge time. And we thought, okay, we'll take turns, because right before shooting light, there's just ducks just wheeling in there. The camera guy's literally laying on the riverbank, just pointing the camera up at the sky, and there's birds like landing on, like right next to him. And so it was really cool. And we're like, we'll take turns. This is going to be awesome. Well, those birds were so close, like 10, 15 yards. We all missed the first bird we shot at. Like, boom, 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 too close. I was like, we better just shoot, and first guy missed and everybody laughs, second guy misses, we all laugh. Third guy misses and it's like, uh-oh. And the fourth guy's like, I got this. And he misses too. And it's like, okay, no more taking turns. We got to start putting ducks in the decoy, on the strap. But it was like they were too close. But that'll be a good one. But that was a rare deal this year to have birds that just bombed on you like that. I mean, it happened a little bit, but like you said, you had to be dialed and you had to make the most of those those first few minutes of daylight, because you weren't going to get that mid-morning 9:30 flight. It wasn't reliable.
Exactly. Well, when that weather finally came, I think it was January the 23rd or 24th, and we had a group of guys in from California, and we had that morning hunt and it was slow. We missed some opportunities, and I as a guide, you're just going, when a group of ducks comes in and they miss, and that these are going to be far and few between, you just shake your head and go, oh my God, you start making up excuses like, well, if we don't kill that many, that's not my fault because they had their opportunities, right? But at about I think we had 2 ducks at noon, and everybody's bored to death, and you could feel the weather changing. And then at 1:00 in the afternoon, 1:15, somewhere around there, it started getting kind of nasty. And these ducks we were seeing these small groups of mallards that were really high coming back to the river from the southeast. And I'm going, well, that's a really odd direction for them to come, because that's really abnormal for where we are to see them coming like that. And then they came, more came, they kept coming. And I'm like, dude, these are new birds. These are birds coming in from Kansas or down on the South Platte somewhere, or even down on the upper Arkansas River, in southeast Colorado. These are birds that are coming back on the reverse.
Right.
And you could tell, because you could hit them hard one time and they acted like new birds from the north. And we ended up in 2 hours, we ended up with a 6-man limit of greenheads.
Dude.
Oh, and I was like, holy crap, this is, I was like, man, I need this right now.
Yeah, your heart's like thumping. Thank God. Thank you, Lord.
And even the geese. So from that day forward to the end of the last day of our dark goose season, which was February the 9th or 10th, something like that. We had really strong days, almost full limits every single day from that day to the end of the season. So it was a blessing for us, and we were very thankful to get what we could get, even though it was a little, short-ended at the end of the season. We still had opportunities to get clients on what we consider to be Prairie Rock Outfitter hunts.
No, that's cool. So Prairie Rock, how long have you done that? You said your media company's about 20 years old, roughly.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And I've been a freelance guide for a long time, but I really just got involved with Prairie Rock about 4 years. No, actually about 5 years ago. I started helping them promote, or helping Ryan Livingston, who is the founder and originator of Prairie Rock. I came in to help him promote his business because he has all this property. He's a 4th generation rancher up in, on the Platte River Valley of Nebraska. And so he has access to some really big ranches, lots of river bottom ground and all that stuff. And so I came in to help him promote it. and it got big really fast. Jim Ronquest came out. We did some TV shows with RNTV. We did some stuff with Ramsey Russell, and obviously, utilized our own social media platforms to
Right.
promote everything. And we started growing really fast. So Ryan approached me about buying into the company. So this was my third full year as part owner of Prairie Rock. And it's just Ryan and I that run everything. So yeah, this is really my third full year as a shareholder in the company to be a part of it.
Yeah, the media company doesn't keep you busy enough. You got to, spread yourself even more thin.
Well, it's funny you say that because, for years I've been a brand chaser. And as you know, having been in this business for a long time yourself, and being a part of Eastman's, which is, an iconic, an iconic pillar in the outdoor space, particularly Western hunting.
Sure.
That brand chasing can be a dog chasing his own tail.
Oh yeah.
Especially now with all the people that have cameras that are shooting stills and shooting video, they can create really good content for people for way less money, way quicker output deliverables. And, it makes it very challenging and competitive in the outdoor space. So my thought was, okay, I've got a handful of brands that I really love. No one can come take these people away from me because we have strong relationships. And
hold on.
And so, okay.
We got a bad connection here. Now we're good.
I see the recording button.
No, we're good. We're still recording. You just got all broken up there. So you were talking about relationships.
Yeah. So, brand chasing can sometimes be a dog chasing his own tail because
Right.
you're in line with people wanting to compete with you, to get in with the biggest brands. Everybody wants to work for Yeti. Everyone wants to work for Sitka. Everyone wants to work for, Browning or Winchester, whoever it is. And it's very competitive. And those brands have opportunities to hire people, at lower rates,
Right.
at very competitive, creative content. These young guys are kicking stuff out that's incredible. So I thought, I would take what Latendresse Media has been doing for 18 or 20 years at that time. And I thought, well, I'm just going to plug and play what I do, utilize what we know how to do, and use that to market and promote Prairie Rock Outfitters and stay with the strong brands that we have these really long-term relationships with, like RNT or Boss Shot Shells, or even I don't do work for Sitka anymore because they took everything in-house, but I still have a relationship with them. And if they ever need help, then I'm always willing to come back and help Jim Saubier out or whoever. So really what I thought was the right transition was to go from being a freelance brand chaser to my own media company for Prairie Rock Outfitters. And that's what we focus on now. I still do some international hunts with some clients that I have good, relationships with. And I've been able to pick and choose those over the years to where I weeded people out that I knew the chemistry was wrong.
Sure.
I did it for the money, and that was it. And now I'm really happy with all the people that I work with. And, I think it just takes time to get to that point. So anyway, that's what we do with Prairie Rock. And that's how I integrated Latendresse Media into the Prairie Rock brand.
That's interesting. That's really interesting because your Latendresse Media has a look. There's certain companies out there that they have a look, where you can take a look at a photo on Instagram, or you see a video on YouTube, or pops up in a Facebook feed, and you can tell without looking at the labeling who that is, or have a pretty good idea of who that is. And that Latendresse Media's got that. And it's interesting that you say, you weed people out, because you're absolutely right. There's things where it's like, if you're forcing it, and I mean, this is business, this is life, this is hunting, whatever. If you're forcing it and trying to put a square peg in a round hole, man, it's just going to hurt the hole and the peg at the same time, and nobody's going to benefit, you know?
You have to recognize what your relationship is with these people so that you don't get pissed off, because you see it all the time, particularly with young people getting into the industry that don't realize, look, man, there was 150 other people that applied for this job or that are trying to get into, this brand as a content creator or a creative, and they hired someone else. And it's because they wanted that look, like you just said, they wanted that unique look to represent their brand. It has nothing to do with whether you're good or bad or indifferent. It was everything. It has everything to do with what they were looking for. And I'll take Sitka for example. There were some really unbelievably talented people that were, challenging themselves, the competition, and the brand to be a big part of what Sitka does, particularly in let's say in the waterfowl category. They ended up hiring Kana Outdoors to do their their launch videos, lots of their feature films and
Right.
short films, because Ben Potter has that look that they wanted. They wanted that raw, high quality, purposeful imagery that was different than everyone else's. Like, the different production companies that have done some huge jobs for huge brands like Cabela's and Bass Pro and
Right.
all these other brands, but they were specifically dialed in to Ben. And I was really happy for him that he got that opportunity, because it blew him up. It blew his content up. It really inspired other people to do what he did, but it was really, again, it was all about him fitting their style. And so if you're young and you're watching this and you get rejected by a brand that doesn't pick you to be their creative, don't get mad, because it's not about, that's not personal. It's about style and chemistry and all those other things involved. So my advice to you would be to go out and find someone, look at chemistry first, because it all starts there and it all ends there. If you get a job with someone and you end up not liking them, think, as the
Yeah, it
wheels
doesn't work.
fall off.
Yeah,
It
it doesn't
doesn't
work. The
work.
wheels fall off really fast too. That's been one thing that I hate to bring up the multi-headed monster, but COVID crushed the shows. COVID crushed the trade shows in the outdoor, and did it for not just the outdoor industry. It did it for everything. I mean, nothing happened.
Everything.
Yeah,
Mhm.
but so much of that relationship building happened at SHOT Show, for example, or Harrisburg, or the NWTF show,
ATA, the list goes on
ATA.
and on.
Yeah, I mean, you could. There's very and Zoom's great, Skype's great. At least it's better than a phone call, because you could see people's facial expressions, and you can. It's more more honest, I guess, to put it that way. But there's nothing that takes the place of actually sitting down, breaking bread with somebody, or even if it's in a booth, and having a sit down meeting with somebody, because there's that personal connection there, and you can tell real fast, this is going to be a fit or it's not going to be a fit, and you do what, like you said, you might do it for the money to start, but it becomes evident real quickly it's either a fit or it's not. And I think that's sound advice to people that are trying to make a way in it. Don't take it personal. Keep grinding. Keep pushing. It's like, so you set out, I don't know how many dozen snow goose decoys, and you get your butt kicked that day. It's not personal. You just got to go back and do it again the next day, and maybe change things up or switch things up or try something different. And you just keep working until you find something that sticks. And that was,
Exactly.
I know with what we did, what we did here, it took us a while, especially with YouTube, and YouTube still, YouTube's like a moving target all the time, man. But it's like, there's guys that crush it on YouTube and they have it dialed. And it's like, man, good for you. You found a niche. But if they were to change their style and what they did, people be like, what's that? It's like, you almost have to just be stubborn sometimes with some things, keep playing with it and keep tweaking. But once you find something that works, you stick with it. You know, one of the things for us is gear reviews. We found our niche with working with Sitka. It was like, we figured out pretty quick that people want information on Sitka products that more than what they can get off the Sitka website. Those are some of our most successful videos are literally breaking down a Sitka system for people and giving honest opinion and feedback on
Educated information.
how we use it. Yeah, exactly. That's great. You know, but you can go anywhere and get a kill shot compilation. You know what I mean? It's like, click on that. Yeah, there's all kinds of
those are entertaining, but
pile porn, you know.
Yeah, I'm with you. I think that education is the key, because people still, they've always, I mean, even going back to the days of the Eastman's, Journal TV show, that was about learning, what really emulating what y'all were doing to become successful for
Right.
yourself. So people watched, Al Linder on the In Fisherman videos to learn how to catch walleyes. People watched Eastman's to learn how to bow hunt, mule deer out in the prairie or whatever it is.
Right.
And I think it's still that foundation and that basic concept is still the key to success, and that's educating people, whether it's gear reviews or how to do this, or where to go in lean times, or how to find a big buck during the early season or whatever it is.
Right.
Education is key, because not everyone, sometimes we probably take things for granted because we've been lucky enough to be with a lot of successful people that have been doing it a long time, people that have great resources, that we're able to, be a part of their world, and most people don't. And I think,
Right.
I think the key to all that is like what you guys are doing. That's educating people. So, we try to do the same thing at Prairie Rock. We just try to educate people on what we just did, why we were successful, but we also don't hide those days where, we weren't so successful, and what's going on. Why is this happening? Are you experiencing the same things? And I think people gravitate towards that kind of stuff.
I think so too. It's kind of like the old adage with, Mike, going back to the Eastmans, Mike Eastman will tell you, well, and so will Guy and Ike, that, for every picture you see for every awesome photo you see in the magazine, there's 200 that didn't make the cut. You know what I mean? And you might have to take 1,000 photos to get 25 you can use, and it's the same way with those days hunting. For every day you go out and blister them, man, there's a lot of days when you're scrambling or it's tough. And if you can help people figure out how to make the most of those good days on their own. I do a little bit of freelance guiding too, for fly fishing, and work with a little company. I don't do it a lot. Back when I was a teacher, I did it. I guided a lot because I had all summer to guide, and now I work all summer, so I can guide here at weekends, here and there, kind of thing. I do it because I like it. It's fun. But if I can't, one of my goals is at the end of the day, if that client steps out of my boat and can take what they learned to another river or another spot, or even go back on the same river the next day by themselves and be successful, then I did my job. I've helped them attain a level of success that they didn't have before. And I think that's what we aim to do. Like you said, that's how Eastman started. That's how it got its start. That's why Wingmen is here, is because of all of those things. And at the end of the day, I think you either need to educate or you need to inspire, and
Exactly.
those
That's why
two
you see
things
people
are
that,
huge.
when someone kills a big deer, a giant lifetime buck, or a once in a lifetime bull elk, or even, win a Bassmaster Elite Blue Trophy event or anything like that, when that happens and you see them cry, that's this lifetime of hard work all boiling down into one successful moment that creates all this emotional outbreak, because yourself how hard you worked to get to that point, and that was a dream, and your dream just came true, and it took you 20 years to get there, and it wasn't luck, it was a lot of failure that culminated into that moment. So that is inspiring in itself, and all the success isn't as educational as all your failures are, because you tell people what you did wrong, which are the things that helped you learn to get to the things that you did right. And you do way more wrong than you do right. Is that not true?
No, man. Yeah, no, absolutely. I recorded a podcast with a couple of guys from Casper that are starting up. Well, they've got it started. They're trying to become official, an HRC club, Boomtown HRC down in Casper. And they were talking about, the trial. We were talking about the trials and errors of training a dog and all that goes with it. And it's the same thing, man. You screw up way more than you are successful, especially to start. And then you kind of get rolling, you figure some things out. But yeah, that startup process is like, am I doing anything right?
Dude, that's one of the most difficult things of all the things that we do in the outdoor space: fishing, hunting, dog training, whatever. Dog training might be one of the most cerebrally difficult things I've ever. I'm not a dog trainer. I just do a podcast with Stephen Durrance, and he teaches me how to train my dog. And my dog was a finished dog when I got him. But as you know, even a finished dog has a lot to learn, from that point moving forward until he really peaks into his dynasty years. And man, the thing about dog training to me that's so difficult is that you have to understand what the dog's thinking. And until you're around a lot of dogs, or you have someone tell you why that dog just did what he did or she did, you don't know. I thought, for 47 years of waterfowl hunting, I've been around a lot of dogs, a lot of great dogs, a lot of terrible dogs, had my own dogs, and I thought I knew a lot about it until I really started digging into serious dog training concepts, advanced concepts with Stephen Durrance, and I realized I don't know anything. And it was very, it was very humbling to go from, you've been a duck hunter your whole life and you've been around all these dogs, to you're one of the most, like, everything I thought I knew is embarrassing, because what I thought was real was totally opposite of what was really real.
It is crazy, and you deal with anyone who's an expert in their field, and has attained a level of expertise, professionalism, of experience, that is that next level. And it's, you get set back in your place real fast. We were talking, like, on that podcast last night. Those guys were funny. They were like, we are not experts. We would never claim to be experts. We just like working our dogs, and it's a club. It's fun. It's something to do. And there's attainable goals that we're working towards. And that's kind of what it was about. But yeah, man, I've got a pup coming in June, from SOK, and I'm kind of working with Barton on making that a project for, like, a video type deal. And just kind of talking with him, we're kind of in the idea phase. I can already tell it's going to be a lot. You talk about a cerebral experience. I guarantee you I'm going to be exhausted after that's done, you know, or in the middle of the process. There's going to be days where it's like, just put the camera away because we can't do it, you know, or
No, that's right. That's so true. Yeah.
you can't force it. You know what I mean? You just can't force it. And you got to work through adversity and challenges, but you got to realize when something's just not working, and you just back up a little bit and come at it from a different angle, or take a break, come at it from a different day. But dude, I was looking at, I'm going to go 180 on us here.
Okay.
I was looking, I when I was a kid, if you'd asked me growing up in the frozen tundra of Michigan's Upper Peninsula, if you'd asked me what I wanted to do, I'd have said, I want to be a professional bass fisherman.
Wow.
And it was the middle of nowhere up there. I mean, it was, yeah, what are you going to be, a professional ice bass fisherman? Because that was about the best.
Hey, but you know, it's funny you say that, because some friends of mine, and you know who they are, who are some of the greatest bass fishermen in the world. In fact, the greatest bass fisherman in the world ever comes from that neck of the woods. And Kevin Van Dam,
KVD.
Mark Zonas from up there.
Yeah.
There's and people don't realize that some of those chain lakes up there, the smallmouth, the world-class smallmouth fishing up there around Traverse City is unfreaking believable. Like the best smallmouth fishing I've ever seen in my life. So
it's
when
crazy.
you say that
really
you wanted to be a pro bass fisherman, I can relate because I live in the bass world, but a lot of people probably would look at that and go,
well, where I grew up, it was like, we didn't really have largemouth bass. We had lots of smallmouth. We had tons of pike. We had muskies. We had walleyes, perch. I mean, all those Al Linder fish, you know what I mean? Those fisherman fish. We didn't have great largemouth bass fishing. I had to go down into southern Michigan to get where there was good largemouth bass fishing. And there was some, but it wasn't not enough to make you an experienced professional bass fisherman. And so here's a KVD story.
Okay.
I'm standing on a dock in the evening as a kid, man. I'm like 12 years old. 13 years old. And I mean, I knew all the professional bass fishermen. It was like, I was a huge fan. That's what I watched. TNN every Sunday, you know, the Nashville Network, watching that stuff. I mean, constantly. And I even conned my parents into taking us on a spring break to Bass Pro Shops in Springfield, Missouri, because that was like Outdoor World. That was like one of the only ones back then, you know,
like the museum. It was like that was the holy grail.
It was the holy grail. And I sold firewood. I sold night crawlers. I mean, dude, I saved every scrap I had for like 2 years, and I blew it all at Outdoor World. I had a wad of cash, man, and I spent all of it. Rods, reels, lures, I mean, you name it. And so then after that, as a treat for us, my parents took us to Big Cedar Lodge for like, I don't know, 2 days, 3 days. And the fishing wasn't great. It was the spawn. The fish were kind of going into post spawn almost. The fish
transition. Yeah.
Yeah, it was tough, you know, it wasn't great. We caught some bass, but it was okay. But there were these pros hanging out that I recognized. Like, Jerry Martin was in the cabin next to us, you know, and I'm like, oh my gosh, you know, you're awestruck. You're awestruck.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So back to this KVD story. Standing there casting a buzzbait in the sunset on this lake in southern Michigan, and this big, really nice bass boat's you can see it, and he's pitching docks, you know, and boat hoists, and you know, just.
So he throwing a spinner bait?
I don't remember what he was throwing. If I remember right, it was like a jig and with a trailer on it. I think he was just pitching those boat docks.
Creature bait of some sort.
Yeah, and anyway, and that was back in the days, really before creature baits. It was like a jig and pig type deal.
The
Denny Brower special, you know. But he's coming up, and I'm watching this guy fish along, and I'm like, I think that's Kevin Van Dam. And he gets a little closer, and you know, I'm standing on the dock, and instead of fishing to it, he goes out around it. He's gonna hit the next one. And he says, how's the fishing tonight? And immediately right there, I was like, holy crap, that's Kevin Van Dam. And he was pretty young he was pretty new to the circuit at the time, but he was a freaking hero, man.
He was already winning. As soon as he hit the pro trail, he started winning immediately.
Yes,
he and I have talked about that. Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, here I am, this 13-year-old kid pitching my little, buzz bait and trying to do, I didn't have a boat or that all like that. And he comes by and good luck, man. Have a good night.
I can hear his voice too, because to this day, that's still Kevin Van Dam. That's still KVD. He always stops and shakes hands with people. When we're out on a lake or whatever we're doing, filming or in a photo shoot, he'll take the time and stop. If he sees those 13-year-old kids at the boat docks, he recognizes that they're standing there and they're not leaving until they make eye contact with him or something. So he goes out of his way and he'll pull in and say, hey, shake their hand, sign their hat for him. He is a great ambassador and a great guy. And he's lived up to, his legend because of who he is. And if you want to know how to be a professional, go hang out with KVD. That's how you become a professional at what you do. You're organized. You know how to handle all the scenarios, be it being in the public eye, being a public speaker. It's not just about catching fish and winning tournaments. It's about all the above, because you could be a hermit and an extreme introvert. You'll never make it because you don't know how to handle those situations. I mean,
right.
2 years ago, we were up in Michigan I was watching the Super Bowl with him, and we were at Buffalo Wild Wings that night watching the Super Bowl, and people wouldn't leave him alone. And you'd think that at some point he'd brush people off and go, man, can I just watch the football game and eat my chicken wings and drink my beer? But he hosted every single person that came over to address him for who he was. He never turned his back on any one of them. And I thought to myself, this is professionophilism at its best.
Right. Right.
Yeah. So,
yeah, well, I let him, I played it cool till he was like not out of sight, but like a couple docks down. And I went flying up the dock, screaming
yes.
like,
that was KVD. Yeah.
My mom's like, who? My dad was like, and my dad had watched enough stuff with me that he was like, oh, that's cool, and of course now he's a legend, but oh my gosh, so anyway, the whole point of all that is, dude, I get such a big kick out of your media with when you were at the Classic. You're looking at your posts, watching that stuff. I still, I'm like trout guy, fly fishing. That's my world now. And I transitioned living in Michigan. I transitioned from the bass stuff, and I got in the steelhead, and that's kind of my world now. But I love watching tournament bass fishing. It's hunting.
It's hunting. I mean, at the end of the day, it's hunting. They're looking for big fish. Are we okay?
Yeah.
They're looking for big fish, and that's what I love about bass fishing, particularly in shallow water, is they're constantly moving around looking for signs, and they're basically scouting with their eyes and their electronics and their boat, just like we do with our GPS and our horses or our four-wheelers or whatever it is we're doing, and we're looking for signs to show us where that trophy bass is or a trophy buck is. And I always constantly relate it to hunting. And I think, when you talk to a lot of the elite anglers at that level, they're all hunters too. Almost all of them do some kind of hunting, because it's the challenge and the chase that pulls us into what we do. Right.
Yeah. No, I fished a handful of tournaments over the years with guys, whether it was bass or walleyes, and just kind of in the boat type thing. And that was one of the things, the tournament that I enjoyed the most was a muskie tournament. because it is big game hunting. I mean, you're literally searching. You are searching, and it's crazy too. Because I was actually talking to Guy Eastman about that, because the Eastmans they love to fish. I mean, especially Guy is like, if he's not hunting, he's in a drift boat someplace. He's fishing. That's his thing. He loves it. And we got for some reason we got talking about big baits. I think there was a picture I saw on one of the rivers I guide. Somebody had just caught a big brown, not a giant trout by any stretch, but a big one. And he had like a 10 or 11 inch sucker hanging out of his mouth that he had coughed up, and he had eaten a streamer with this other fish sticking out of his mouth. And we were joking about it, because it's like, you can't throw big enough bait. And I said, I learned that fishing muskies, because all of the biggest fish of any species that I've ever caught I've caught them as bycatch while I was fishing for muskies. I mean, I never weighed this fish, but I caught a largemouth, biggest largemouth I've ever caught. This was in the Upper Peninsula, where they don't get, much over. A giant is 4 or 5 pounds. They don't get huge. I caught one I bet money would go 8 to 9 pounds.
Wow.
And he had an entire musky topwater bait sucked into his mouth.
Choked
the whole thing, choked it down. And this is like a foot long prop bait, big fat thing. And I thought I had a nice muskie when he sucked it down, the toilet bowl flush, and I set the hook, and it was a pretty good fish. But even an 8 or 9 pound bass doesn't stand much of a chance on an 8-foot muskie rod. You just kind of winch them in. Right. But literally biggest walleyes, biggest, you name it, they all came on fishing for muskies, all of them. And it was just, so that hunting stuff, you're hunting for the biggest fish. I could see it, and that's one of the things I love about watching that stuff and watching your media on that, is it takes you right back into it. And there's that connection to hunting, that connection to that excitement.
Predatorial instincts,
man. It's so cool. It's just so cool. And yeah, it's interesting what different guys do. And, obviously we all make our living in the outdoor space and hunting in general, but man, I get a kick out of that fishing stuff too. And I really enjoyed your stuff the last couple of weeks.
Well, thank you. Those guys, their goal is to go out, from the top of the morning, their goal is to go out and put 5 legal fish in their box. So they have their 5 and that pressure's off. Then when they decide to go, if they're not on big fish, they go hunt big fish. And they always say it. They always say, okay, now we're going to go hunt for big ones. Right. And they always upsize their baits. They upsize their rods. It's almost like, okay, we just went from 20 gauges to 10 gauges. We're going to go find the big ones. And exactly. And it's that part of the day. To me, it's the slowest, but when it happens and they blow up on a buzz bait or a big spinner bait or a topwater, even a jerk bait, it's like this moment that just, it's adrenaline. And it's funny, as a camera guy in the back of the boat with whoever it is, when something big, a big moment occurs, there's energy between us. I always tell people ask me, what's it like being in the boat with, KVD or Jason Christie or Greg Hackney or whoever it is. I'm like, it's almost like being a caddy to a professional golfer, where we're having this conversation all day long, and they're not asking for advice because they know everything. They still question themselves. They still backlash. They still miss their casts. And they get frustrated with what they get, their lines caught in their trolling motor. They do the same things that everyone else does. And you wouldn't think it until you're in a boat with one of them and you go, they're humans too. And they have all these,
it's just a dude.
Like, it's all, that's right. But their skill, and I'm going to go back to something we were talking about a minute ago, where, to get to that level of whatever it is you're doing, hunting or fishing, you have to be able to think outside the box, right?
Right.
And because everybody thinks the same way, like photography has gotten vanilla because everyone goes to YouTube, they take the same color grading techniques or presets or transitions for videos, and everyone's doing the same thing. But there's some people that just stand out, like the Lee Choses, the Bill Buckleys, the Clay Connors of the world, that have this particular look about them that makes them stand out. And one time I would say about 15 years ago, Mark Drury and I were having this conversation at SHOT Show, and he said it takes 10,000 hours to become an expert at something.
Right.
And you can either take this long to do it or you can take this long to do it, but it takes that much experience to become really a professional and an expert at what you're doing. And then I read this book called The Outliers. It has nothing to do with hunting or fishing or anything. It has everything to do with your philosophical outlook on life and how to become successful, because it doesn't teach you how, but it tells you, to think differently than everyone else. And when you get in the boat with someone, all these guys, like Greg Hackney and I were having this conversation in Knoxville the other day on the Tennessee River. He was back in this creek, this finger to this, the mouth of this creek. And all these boats were passing him, and everyone else was making a 25 or 30 mile run downstream to get to the big mother lode of fish. And everyone's catching 8-9 pounds of fish at weigh-in, and Greg's 7 or 8 miles from the launch. And I said, I was really surprised that you had this all to yourself, because there's the habitat in here is incredible. And he goes, I wasn't surprised at all. I would have been surprised if someone had come in here, because everyone's gaining the information that the big mother lode of fish is downstream, but I wanted to stay away from them because I didn't want to have to compete against all those other anglers for my fish. And I knew if I came in here, I wouldn't catch as many. I might only have 5 to 8 bites a day, but the bites that I would get would be the right ones. And he was right. I mean, he finished in the top 10 and had a really great tournament, and it was because he was thinking outside the box. And I think what you do, what I do, what Guy and Mike and Ike and KVD and everyone else does, they're successful at it because they think outside the box.
Man, there's no question about that. There's times when in the big game space, especially when he'll say something or explain something and you'll go, huh, I never thought of it that way, Mm-hmm. And yeah, it's made them, it has set them apart over time.
And if you would go, because you have enough humbleness and enough experience at this to go, I never thought about it that way. But the people that are missing the boat are saying, oh yeah, I knew that too. And they really didn't. And it just goes right over their head because they're too busy. They're too busy thinking they don't want that other person to know they didn't know that.
Right.
And they miss the whole point. And it's all about, if you want to learn and understand, you got to pay attention. You got to be humble, right?
No, I completely agree. And it's that ego thing that we can talk about gets in the way. It gets in the way. It'll trip you up. And it's like, and the funny thing is, you'd be going along at a pretty good pace, thinking you're the man, and life's going good, and then all of a sudden you just fall smack on your nose, man, and your world's turned upside down. And you go, oh yeah, that ego thing again. If I would have been paying attention and been humble. Yeah, no, I hear you. If there's
anyone on the planet that I've ever wanted to beat up physically, it would be my own alter ego.
I know.
I'd like to step outside of that guy and just beat him up sometime.
That guy needs a throat punch, I swear. No, there's times, man. There's times, whether it's like, yeah, oh geez. No, you're absolutely spot on. But so what do you got coming up? You got any turkey trips, any snow goose stuff? What do you got going on?
No, I quit hating on snow geese a long time ago. That is a lot of work.
Man, I tell you what, it was funny. We did a DIY one, I don't know, a few years back in Saskatchewan, and kind of DIY, kind of outfitted, kind of tagged along deal. And I didn't go on that. The cameraman and our Beyond the Grid guy, Dan Picard, actually went and filmed that. And it was really cool. But we talked about going back up, and I'm like, I don't know. I'd rather just go with an outfitter.
Yeah.
I don't.
I'm the same way. We don't do any snow goose guiding or outfitting at Prairie Rock. We do, however, guide turkey hunts. So, and we have one of the longest turkey hunts in the country. So and last year we had to cancel our entire turkey season because of COVID. And so we had to roll everyone into this year. So we didn't do any kind of promotional work or marketing for our turkey season because we were already full before the season started.
And I don't think you're alone. You know, I had a really cool snow goose trip planned in South Dakota, with South Dakota Snows, and it, got canceled because of COVID, and it ended up not happening. And then we tried to piece together for this year, and it was like, no room. I've had to rebook all those clients and take some new ones. And so it's like, okay, we'll let that cycle through the system. We'll go do another snow goose hunt one, next year or the year after. But to go do that DIY thing, I'm like, dude, I'm not 22 years old anymore.
I'm leaving that to the kids, man.
I know. And my hats off to them. You know what I mean? I'm like, right. You guys hate it. You guys hate those things worse than I do.
Kill them all.
I'm just, go get them. Go get them. And I'll go along with you. But dude, to go run that grind, it's like, we have a young guy out here, Noah Miller, with Western Waterfowlers. He's got a little guide service that he comes and runs, but he's kind of freelances all over the country. And he canceled the last part of his season because of our birds, he just couldn't get his clients on stuff consistently. He didn't go out and have one day where they'd smash a 6 or 7 man limit, and then the next 2 days they'd kill like 2. It was just like, that's how really, it is. Really hard. And so he just like refunded deposits and rebooked people for the next year. And he's like, I said, well, what are you going to do? And he's like, I'm on my way to Arkansas. I was like, you gonna go flirt with the white devil, huh? He's like, oh yeah, I'm gonna go lay in the mud for a while. He's, he's 21, 22 years old. Good for you.
Exactly.
Good for you.
People call us or send us DMs on social media and ask us if we guide snow goose hunts, and I'm like, absolutely not.
Yeah, but here's 6 dudes that do. Go with them.
Yeah, exactly. And talk about burnout. I mean, you gotta, I say this tongue in cheek because I would never, ever forfeit the fact that we get to do what we love to do for a living.
Right.
Okay. So I'm not going to belittle any of this stuff at all, but it's a grind. You wake up super early. You're the first one awake and you're the last one to get to bed when you're outfitting, and it's a grind over and over and over and over again, especially during a long season or an extended goose season. And then you roll, we used to say turkey season was the connective tissue between hunting seasons. Turkey season years ago just was like, well, let's start turkey hunting because, it gives you something to do during the off season or before the crappie start biting or whatever. Right. And now it's a rolling process. It never ends. And if we added snow goose hunting to our as a category in our outfitting service, I don't know. It would just be a super grind, and I just don't think I could do it. You got to have some time off.
You'd have to hire a whole bunch of young guys that are getting after it, but then you're making sure they're doing what they need to be doing.
You're still working.
Yeah, you're still working, and they've got what they need to operate right. Yeah, and I'm with you. You
got unhappy clients because you don't have wind for 2 weeks. And it's like,
I know it,
man, I don't know what to tell you, buddy.
I know it's crazy, but yeah, one of these years we'll do another snow goose video. But we had same thing, man. I had Nebraska lined out last year for turkeys, Montana, South Dakota. The South Dakota one fell through for different reasons, but Nebraska shut down, and that was like, okay, so much for that hunt. and we weren't even really planning on hunting our home state because we've done it, so much. It's like, how many Wyoming turkey videos can we do? But it was kind of like, I got to do something, because then Montana didn't close. You could still go and hunt, but the ranch we had permission to hunt, the ranch manager was like, no, we're not letting anybody on the property. And so it was like, okay, guess we're going to buy a General Wyoming tag and go do what we've always done. And we got a neat little video coming out this weekend about it. But yeah, man, it was. So this year, I don't have a clue what turkey's going to look like for us. I don't guide them, but we still got to put out video, and it's kind of like, I don't know if we're going to run around. I don't know what it's going to look like. And it depends on what tags we draw too.
We have a ton. We had we didn't kill any last year.
Right.
And there is a noticeable difference in not only the offspring, the number of Jakes and young hens that we have and huge flocks, but the groups of longbeards that we had this winter that were roosting together were I'll call it what it is. We're double the size we normally have, because we didn't kill any birds last year.
Right.
And so this year for us should be a really, really good year.
No, that's cool. That's cool. Good for
Hopefully.
you. Yeah. Who knows?
It's hunting. It's
hunting,
and
it's 2021. You have a clue what's coming next. It's
exactly.
Like, who knows what this roller coaster is going to be? I don't. Whatever.
Exactly.
But, well, dude, I appreciate your time. This has been. I think we could keep going, but I think we've got like an hour and a half worth of podcast here. So this has been fun. I appreciate it. We'll have to do it again, maybe after turkey season or before next fall. But if you get up this way and get a chance, swing in, stop by. We'll go fishing or something. That'd be fun.
Sounds great. Thank you for having me on. I was a huge Eastman's fan my entire life. And my dad took me elk hunting when I was, back in the 7th or 8th grade, when I was a kid a long time ago. And, I've been watching Eastman's pretty much my entire life, or at least as long as it's been on, that I can remember. And so, I feel privileged and honored to be on your podcast. And, if you ever want to come down and do a duck hunt with us at Prairie Rock, then we should at some point talk about that.
Let's do it.
Yeah. I'd love to have you down, video or not. Just this was an enjoyable conversation, and we've both been around the industry for a long time, so I don't hesitate to say that we would have a big time in the duck blind together.
I think it'd be fun too. Yeah, we'll have to look at that next fall and see if we can make that happen. That'd be a ball. Absolutely. I might even be able to sneak Guy along.
That would be awesome. Yeah, that would be awesome.
Tell you what, I've got him on one
invite.
Hunt. I got him on one hunt, and it was because his daughter was involved, and we did that. We did a dads and daughters day in the goose blind last year, and he actually had a really good time. He killed his first Canada, and he was like, "Yeah, this was a lot of fun. This is a lot of fun."
That's cool.
So
cool.
I'm working on it.
Right. That wasn't so bad after all.
Yeah, exactly. But no, cool, man. Yeah, we'll make that happen. Well, I forgot to ask the guys last night this question, but I've been asking a question to close out. If you could only hunt one bird one way for the rest of your life, and it got forced on you, what are you going to pick and why?
One bird one way for the rest of my life. I have a toss up here. Okay. I mean, a lot of people would say, a lot of people are going to say greenheads and flooded timber of Arkansas.
I mean, that is like the answer so far.
Right. I'm going to say, and Jim Ronquist, you ask him in a serious conversation, he's going to agree with this, because he's hunted out there on the North Platte with me in these tight warm water sloughs in cottonwood stands in the timber on the river. That's a pretty damn close second. Small, skinny water hunting for mallards is pretty intimate. So
that's pretty much what he said. That's pretty much it. It wasn't necessarily exactly flooded timber. It was small, skinny water ducks, mallards.
That's right.
Yeah,
That's
no,
right.
there's something special about that. That is for sure.
There is. That's my answer, and I'm sticking with it.
I love it. I love it. Well, Jake, thank you very much, man. And I will catch you on the flip side. I'm going to stop recording.